Okay, this video technically starts at 10 minutes and 36 seconds, but here is like a super quick intro that ended up being 10 minutes if you're interested. I do want to put a quick disclaimer in intro. So this video is not for people that believe forgiveness is necessary, and that also includes the people that are like, forgiveness is for you, it's not for them, it doesn't matter, that it doesn't mean you're okay with what happened, it's just for your own peace so you can let go, because that is still a form of control. When you assert yourself into a broad conversation regarding healing and things that are medicinal for people, and you suggest that anybody who doesn't seek or desire or feel the need for forgiveness is missing out, or that they have like this absence to their healing journey that they need to fill, because that's really not how it works. So this video is for people who don't want to forgive or don't need to forgive or have gone through their life not forgiving and thriving from it and are sick of the conversation of people coming in like forgiveness evangelicals. You know, there's a difference between sharing what works for you and talking about the value of it versus shoving it down people's throats. And it doesn't matter how subtle or intensely you shove, because when you don't know how to accept the fact that some people don't need forgiveness to heal, like that they're genuinely okay, and they can feel at peace and let go without doing it. If that bothers you, then that's a reflection of not them doing something wrong, but of you not being at peace with the method of healing that you claim is so much of a holy grail. Because if you were at peace with it, you wouldn't feel the need to try and convert others into your perspective, even when they're providing living proof and hefty amounts of evidence that their method works without needing to convert yours. And when people talk about their trauma and get vulnerable and open up, they don't need to give you a resume. Like if someone says, you know, that's actually not for me, it really just isn't for them. Forgiveness is not necessary. It just isn't. And what I'm going to talk about a lot more in this video is I'm of the perspective that you do not need to forgive anyone. You do not need to forgive anything in order to let go. And if that feels hard for you, that is okay. But I've lived my life not needing to forgive people. I've forgiven trivial things, but when it comes to things that are unforgivable, I have a really healthy connection to myself and my emotions, like my relationship with all my emotions and all my feelings, including anger and resentment, because that's what the definition of forgiveness is. It's like you have to let go of anger or resentment. But it's like those emotions for me, they're not blocks. They're not blockages for me. They're not dirty little pieces of garbage that I need to exorcise from myself in order to be free from them. I actually love them, and I love what they stand for. And if you have that type of relationship with your anger and your resentment, then forgiveness is 100% not necessary in order for you to feel at peace, to let go, to heal, to be okay, like to be anything. Even though some of them bring up hard feelings to process, like I said earlier, I see emotions like the color wheel. You know those color wheels where it's like all the colors and these are all the different like hues of different types of each type of color, or it's a spectrum, and I love all the colors on that color wheel and I love all the points on that spectrum. I'm grateful for all of them because they provide reflections of who I am and what I stand for, and they show me what I need to see, and they show me what I need to feel and process in order to stay in touch with the truth. I don't give a shit about forgiveness. I never have, and it's allowed me to identify the illusions in this world that condition us to settle for shitty people and shitty things. If forgiveness works for you, then that is great, but elephant in the room, it's not always healthy to forgive or even to push it as something that's healthy, because I can accept what happened to me with grace and with awareness without forgiving anyone. It just kind of gives this weird biblical undertone of like, if you are not controlled and you're not looking for the control of submitting to this idea that you need forgiveness in order to heal, it's kind of like a woman bit an apple on a tree and now the entire world created a global cult to try and punish and shame us eternally. you don't need to do that, and that's why I'm making this video. Like, I'm ultimately making it for anyone who's open-minded and curious enough to listen, but if you already are against what I'm saying and it's making you feel anger, then why don't you just forgive me? No, I'm kidding. You should probably leave, because you're gonna be annoyed at this and you're gonna waste your time, and why the fuck would you want to do that? Forgiveness isn't required for somebody to be at peace or move on with their lives, and I know that because I'm living proof of it, and I know people that are also living proof of it, and there's thousands and millions of people in the world that feel the same way and are doing great right now. I also don't believe that anger or resentment can cause health issues. I think that's possible if you don't address them or if you repress them, but when you choose to not forgive somebody, that's not a sign of resentment or suppressing your emotions. Ultimately, health issues are caused by suppressed emotions. So if you have anger and resentment and you're suppressing it, that is obviously going to lead to some health issues. Like, I think just in anyone. But if you have anger and resentment and you're not suppressing them and you accept them, you accept your feelings that they are what they are, just like you accept your joy or your happiness or your sadness, it's not going to cause health issues. I think that's an indication and a reflection of your own inner turmoil regarding how you process your emotions. And I'm not saying that you're lacking anything, but I am saying that if your own emotions are causing your literal health to decline and your body to suffer, that doesn't mean that it's the same case for everyone else. Because people are waking up and living the rest of their lives without feeling the need or desire to forgive people, and they don't need to do that in order to move on from their past and to feel free. And I don't even like the idea of like, oh, you have to do this to let go and move on. Like, there are some things that are gonna hurt for the rest of your life. And it's not because you didn't do something to free yourself from it, it's because you have a conscience. And you have morals and standards, and so thinking about those things, like, those are things that happen to you. It's completely normal. Like, I don't get this idea of, oh, you're harboring resentment because you're still mad. Like, no, I'm still mad because I'm disgusted at the injustice. Like, I feel like people who don't have this like sense of justice in their DNA just don't get that. And, like, I don't feel the need to let go. Like I said, I've made peace with what has happened to me. And if I hadn't, I wouldn't be alive. So, yeah, of course, I'm let go and I'm quote-unquote freed from it in a sense because I've been able to pick myself up and move on and turn my pain into something that isn't just shoved into a box inside of me. Like, but I'm still going to be upset about stuff, the same way that I still feel joy when I think of happy memories with people. It's okay to feel anger or be upset or feel grief at sad or fucked up memories, or memories of things that happened to you that were fucked up. Like, that's not going to ruin your life or prevent you from living. I think that's just normal. It's okay to not be a blank slate regarding your trauma or your wounds or your suffering. If you don't know how to sit with your wounds, if you want them out, if you treat them like a splinter, then yeah, of course you're gonna love the idea that forgive and let go, forgive and let go. You know, like a preacher that's like, your depression, your anxiety's a demon. Of course you're gonna like that. But if you love all parts of you, you're not gonna be threatened or weighed down by your emotions. They might not always be pleasant to feel, but it doesn't mean that they're toxic or that they're setting you back. As for me, my anger, I describe that part of me as like mama bear or fierce lioness that refuses to tolerate or accept or make peace with cruelty, because I do not need to make peace with cruelty when cruelty creates war. So for the same reason that a judge is not going to sit in a courtroom and look at a victim of a heinous crime and say, well, at least just say an injustice-oriented judge for that reason, and say to the victim, are you ready to forgive so we can move on and close this case and we can all let you guys go? No, you're gonna hold the fucking defendant accountable. What the fuck is the judge even there for if that's the case, you know? The judge isn't gonna get cancer and the victim is not gonna be in danger or have their health declined. Nothing bad is going to happen to those people because they both refused to forgive/dismiss the actions of the perpetrator. They held that person accountable, and that is peace. That is letting go. When the gavel fucking slams on the table, that is making peace. Because you've come to the conclusion that what happened was not okay. And I don't need to do anything about that. I don't need to force myself to feel a certain way. I just know that that was wrong, and that is my peace. So, forgiveness in your own personal life is the same thing. And when it's pushed in situations and onto people where it doesn't need to be pushed, that's how cycles of abuse perpetuate. So, let's talk about it. The mere concept of forgiveness in our world is so unhealthy and harmful. The fact that it is perpetuated as this thing that you have to do to set yourself free is completely hypocritical to its core. Let me explain. So if truth was a person, if you could personify the concept of truth, would truth yield at something that is inherently based on injustice or inherently built from lovelessness? Would truth yield if truth was literally like a scale and you had abuse, oppression, control, shame, fear, marginalization, bigotry, hatred, murder, rape, everything that is inherently cruel and does not come from a place of anything related to or of love, justice, and truth. If you took that and truth was in the middle or on this side, would it make sense to forgive this? Because when you're asking somebody to forgive, you're asking them to see that on some level or in some way, shape, or form, this wasn't really intended. Or it happened, but it's acceptable because of what? Forgiveness is literally accept that this is okay. Accept that this is okay because they didn't know, or they had XYZ an excuse, like how, the pedophile was raped as a child, so they grew up thinking that it was okay, or your parents abused you, but it's the best they knew at the time, so you can't really resent them enough, or you can't resent them for the rest of your life. Or your parents abused you, but they did the best they could with what they knew, and maybe they were abused as a child, so that's the best that they knew how to do with you, and you have to forgive them because they didn't know. They did the best they could. Shut the fuck up. If somebody is intent with a pattern of behavior, and the things that they do to somebody, and the way that they treat somebody, that is intentional. There is no basis of that cruelty that is rooted in not knowing what they're doing, or in just not having the tools to do better. Those are choices. Those are literal decisions that somebody is making to cause harm to another person. And most of the time when people do stuff like that, they're getting a sense of gratification. They're getting satisfaction. They're getting validation to a part of them that likes it. For people who do things like that, that's their truth. They believe that is the right thing to do. And they believe that there is truth in their actions. So back to the scale thing, if this is truth on one hand, and we're weighing things out, there is not going to be a balance, because the nature of this is not this. So there's no way that truth is going to be yeah, we're on the same page, bro. Ultimately, if I just pretend that there's a core goodness underneath all the layers of your crap, if truth wants to lie to itself, then sure, we'd get here. But truth doesn't do that. Truth does not make exceptions. I picked that up and dropped it on the desk. Is there something underneath what just happened that isn't me picking this up and dropping this on the desk? Did plankton crawl inside my head? Are we in that episode of SpongeBob where I was being controlled? But that's also something
that, like, when religion specifically pushes I didn't even start out this video specifically thinking of religion, but it's kind of hard not to think of religion when religion is literally something that abusers love to flock to, because you can do whatever the fuck you want to anybody as many times as you want, and then still be accepted into eternal glory and unconditional love, and essentially permission by a male narcissistic god. But, what was I saying? Oh yeah, is this that episode of... Wait, no. What was I saying after Plankton? Oh yeah, okay, so like forgiveness is literally essentially giving somebody permission to hurt somebody else. And I hate when people are like, no, it's not like that. It just means that you're setting yourself free because blah, 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 blah. I'm like, because what? Because I'm perceiving it as what? Something that it wasn't? Really unhealthy that we've been conditioned to just accept that somebody else is not who they are. I think it's weird that we're pushed to accept the idea of accepting somebody else's intentional wrongdoings. There's a massive difference between somebody, like, okay, when I was little, I got really mad at my little brother. I don't remember what the fuck was going on, but we were after school one time, or we were home together after school one time, and he kept, like, pissing me off and doing something or saying something, and I kept telling him, like, stop, oh my god, stop, like, you're seriously bothering me, like, now I'm pissed off. And then he kept doing it, and I was like, oh my god, stop, like, just stop. And I went upstairs to my room, and I shut the door, and I just, like, needed to be alone, because he was, like, really, he pushed my buttons, and, like, he was at the age where trolling was super funny. Just seeing me pissed off was like, haha, funny. And when it got to the point where I was, like, on the verge of tears and just, like, snapped, he felt really bad. And I remember he slipped a Lego under my door. And I still have that. I kept it in a jar, a special jar, with, like, a bunch of other sentimental things. But he slipped a note under my door. The note was wrapped around the Lego. And the note was like this, like, wrapped around the Lego. And then the Lego's arms were like that. So the note was, like, literally written across its chest. And he just goes, slips it under the door. And I was like, now I feel like shit because I snapped at him. But, like, he pushed me to the point, okay? And we were kids. I need to be quiet because I don't want to wake anyone up. These balls are thin, okay? I looked at the note on the Lego, and it was like, gee, I'm so sorry for what I did. Can you please forgive me? I know it was wrong, but can you please forgive me? And there was a sad face at the end, and I was like, oh my god, like, of course I forgive you. He's a child, and he didn't know, and, like, he was not intending to do that. Like, he was not intending to make me mad, even though he was, like, trying to push my buttons and piss me off. When he saw how in distress I was, he literally was like, he felt so bad. I opened the door later, and he was just sitting there, like, waiting for me. And I was like, it's okay, like, I'm sorry I yelled at you, just, like, please don't do that again. And he was like, okay, I'm sorry, G. I was like, it's okay, like, I love you, like, I don't hate you, you're not a bad person, you're not a bad brother. It's like, okay. And he never did it again. I don't even remember what the fucking argument was about, but, like, he never did it again. And I knew that, like, he genuinely did not intend to hurt me.
Also, how can I not be slightly biased? I mean, look at this adorable little dude. This is my baby brother we're talking about. Like, this kid, really? So cute.
And when he found out that he hurt me, it hurt him. So forgiveness in the context of something like that, where the person genuinely doesn't know, and, like, they're not at the stage in their human development where they understand, like, that is not okay, that's so different, and it was something so minor. But, like, forgiveness for abuse, especially, like, adults abusing other people, bigotry, oppression, control, cults, belief systems, like, these things that people go through life and they intentionally hurt other people, or they'll do it collectively. Exhibit A, our government. Like, not everything is forgivable. There are people making choices, and they get off to their choices. They like seeing people hurt, and they like knowing that they inflicted the harm because they like the sense of control that it gives them. There are people who are empowered when they disempower and break down other people. That's not forgivable because it's not coming from the same place as a prepubescent little boy pushing my buttons and trolling me over something stupid and then slipping a Lego under my door with a note begging for forgiveness. Those are completely different things. So yes, forgiveness as a concept makes sense when the context makes sense. But as adults, being pushed to forgive abusers, being pushed to forgive power systems and religions and belief systems and communities and like anything that's intentional, and like especially when it's like in your personal relationships or your personal communities, and you can even take it a step further and like on a global societal level, like things that have been happening time after time, patterns of behavior where people know it's wrong but they do it anyway. That's not forgivable, and it doesn't need to be. And if you need to source your freedom from accepting that something unacceptable is acceptable, you're teaching yourself, especially when you push that shit down other people's throats, you're not only teaching yourself, but you're teaching other people that cruelty has its place in this world. That abuse is acceptable, because forgiveness literally means that you're understanding that it was valid in some way, shape, or form. And I don't really think that the counter argument of it's not for you, it's not for them, it's for you, or you're not saying that it was okay, you're just saying that you're okay with it. Why the fuck do you have to be okay with it? Why should I have to abandon the part of me that's rightfully pissed off and rightfully disapproving of something that is inherently fucking sick and vile? Do you think that if Truth was a person, Truth would sit there and be like, lenient? Like, you don't even have to picture that you don't even have to make it figurative like that, but does the part of you that knows that that is not okay, is that naturally willing to bend and break?
Mine does not, and I think a lot of the pressure to fix or reform that part of you does not come from a valid place, and it definitely doesn't come from a psychologically stable place either. I think it's honestly stemmed from a very colonized and religious patriarchal perspective on healing, which ultimately is not very medicinal. We know that those things have been poisonous and toxic to the world for as long as they've existed. To demonize the parts of you that have standards and have boundaries and are not afraid to slice through illusion, more importantly, are not afraid to unsee what they saw when they did slice through illusion, to say no and to hold those boundaries up, feeling upset and grieving and feeling hurt and saddened by the injustice done by another person, whether it's done to you or someone else or both or nature. That part of you does not need to heal. You should feel sad and grieving. Like, what if you're able to be honest with yourself enough to even get to the point of feeling those feelings, I think it means you are quite healed in regarding to this issue, whatever you're sad or mad or upset about, right? Because I think the more that you feel into those parts of yourself, the more liberated and healthy and empowered you become, because you're not settling anymore. You're not settling any part of your being that just absolutely rejects the cruelty. You don't need to reject the part of you that isn't okay with things like that. I think it's really good. I think it shows that you have a conscience. The more happy and at peace and proud of the person I've become, like, I've been able to reach states like that because it allows me to integrate my experiences into my being and not let them prevent me from being who I'm meant to be and living the way I'm meant to live. And so I actually think that when I don't pressure myself to forgive, it's crazy. People say, oh, you need to forgive to move on. I'm like, really? When I've been able to move on in life, it's because I accept that what was done to me was unacceptable, and that's it. I don't need to, like, what am I, this Virgin Mother Mary that needs to just bow down and fucking, like, what are you talking about? You don't need to do anything more. If it feels good for you and it feels what's right, you don't have to take back the part of you that doesn't have tolerance for something. Tolerance for lovelessness and cruelty. You don't need to feel at war with yourself, especially when it comes to parts of you that lead you out of that inner war and into peace. If forgiveness works for you, then congrats, but for a lot of us it doesn't, and that part of us allows us to take ownership of our sense of sovereignty. And honestly, for me, that part of me, more than a lot of other parts of me, that's the part of me that really gets shit going, you know? That's part of my fire, and fire doesn't need to be tamed. And in fact, it really shouldn't, because it's not dangerous and it's not bad, especially in women. It's transformative, it's alchemizing, it's love in motion, it's fierce, it's not afraid to back down from lovelessness. It's that part of you that doesn't die out regardless of how many people and things and conditioning and forms of conditioning try to extinguish it or shame you into keeping it in a box. And I also think that's quite misogynistic and patriarchal to stigmatize or label what I'm saying as wrong or lost, because how is that any different than getting lobotomized in a slightly earlier time period for not wanting to take shit? Like, me doing this as well as analyzing it and verbalizing it, people treat it like it's a crime, and it's like, why? Don't you ever question why you're so scared of people doing this? I think the part of us that isn't willing to forgive, it scares people because it's not controlled. It's not controlled. It's not something that you can tame, and it's the part of you that it's easier for some people to label it as undeveloped or unhealthy or unfreed. But freedom doesn't tell people how to get there. And you know what else can't be controlled? Love. I think it's an act of love to not be willing to forgive. And all this world does is try and get you to pull yourself away from the love within yourself. Why are you demonizing somebody not wanting to forgive someone? If forgiveness is for you, as you fuckers claim it is all the time, why on earth would you say that you have to do this? That's like saying, you know what, going shopping is for you. Finding clothes you like is for you. And then someone comes out with yellow pants and you're like, no, you need to go back and get the orange ones. Like, I'm sorry, bitch. I thought it was for me. Let it speak for itself. And it has spoken. Love tries to get you to pull yourself away from the lovelessness tries to get you to pull away from the love within yourself. And that same crap I mentioned earlier about colonization and patriarchy and religion, which they're all just sick triplets, by the way, they're notorious for trying to pull people away from their inner voice and their inner calling. And the fierce aspects of love are feared by those things because those things aren't owned. They can't be owned. They can't truly be owned or taken from anyone. And take conversion therapy, for example, right? You love who you love. Oh no, we're threatened by you. We're so threatened by the fact that you are a living example of how love can't be controlled. So we must convert you, even though it's not how love works. You don't need to budge over things you don't budge over, and you don't need to force yourself to do anything that you don't want to do, especially when it comes to what you find is medicinal in your life. And that's just it.
Because I feel like if it was and we were wired like that, you wouldn't have to convince people to forgive. You wouldn't have to convince people that forgiveness is for your freedom. All these things in this world where, like, you're telling people that this is what freedom feels like or looks like, or this is what love looks like, or this is what truth looks like, or this is what this or that looks like. But when you have to convince people, you've already lost your point. Your theory's already collapsed on itself, because if you have to convince people to believe something is a certain something when everything in them is telling them it's not, how does that signify truth's presence? Because to me it signifies truth's absence. The moment that an ideology or a concept requires force or even belief for it to be accepted, for it to flow through you as freedom, you're proving that it's not what it is. Because if forgiveness was freedom, you wouldn't have to convince people that they aren't putting on restraints on their hearts and their minds and their bodies and their nervous system. Like, in order for them to fucking buy into it. It's so hard to explain the obvious, but it's like also not, because it's just right there. And especially when forgiveness is pushed on women, I see this in religion and in New Age spirituality as well, is the whole forgiveness sets you free. If you can't forgive, you're just bitter and holding on to something. Like, why do you view people who are strong enough to not bend their morals and their values and their sense of truth and their sense of justice? Why do you view that as being stuck? Maybe you feel stuck because the idea of being like that would require you to abandon the idea that abandoning your sense of justice and your values is what freedom looks like. I cannot imagine being uncomfortable, so uncomfortable at the idea of somebody who hasn't bought into the idea that forgiveness is freedom. Like, I just can't imagine looking at someone like that and being like, oh, you're actually missing something. Missing what? The key that you found? Because if the key was the key, it wouldn't need to force its way into anybody's lock. That's not how finding the key to something works. And that's certainly not how finding freedom works either. So, is forgiveness freedom? Because if it's freedom for you, you wouldn't need to convince other people that it's freedom for them. You would actually trust and be so confident that it speaks for itself. Okay, I took a break and then got distracted and forgot what I was going to say, and then it came back to this. I don't really have much else to say. If that resonates with you, then I'm glad that you feel like you watched something that made you go, exactly. That's what I feel in my heart. Thank you. I hope I was your safe space for the past 15 minutes and 38 seconds. Love you.